The church in Poland has always been a bastion of faith and orthodoxy, a church that, as her motto says, has been always faithful, semper fidelis, a church capable of producing, in the last decades, saints of the stature of Father Kolbe, Faustina Kowalska, Father Popieluszko, or John Paul II, a church that firmly resisted the invasion of Hitler and the invasion of Stalin, who allied themselves to conquer it up and divide it up, a church that surprised the world when in the famous strike, the Solidarity Trade Union, the workers of Gdansk shipyards were taking communion on their knees. That was the final straw for the Soviet Empire, the workers taking communion on their knees in a country that had been subjected to Soviet tyranny, to a communist tyranny for decades. When the wall fell in 1989, thanks in large part to Poland, thanks to St. John Paul II, when the Berlin Wall fell, the Catholic Church in Poland seemed to be irretrievably destined to succumb, as the nations of Western Europe had done, and she did not. For years, she had continued to maintain herself with full churches and full seminaries. However, the latest data are not good. Religious practice has begun to fall, and in some places quite a bit, and seminaries are also suffering. Of course, nothing to do with the dreadful crisis affecting practically all European nations, but certainly not as it was until relatively recently. The Polish bishops know very well what the cause of the problem is, where the virus that also is affecting from them comes from the other bank of the other river, that is, from the neighbors, the Germans. It is the virus of relativism, which, by the way, was admirably denounced by Benedict XVI, and he did it when he was still Cardinal Ratzinger. It is the virus of relativism, which is transformed into the dictatorship of relativism and which comes together with secularism and laicism, but the Polish bishops are not willing to allow themselves to be subdued and subjected by their German neighbors. The president of the Polish Bishops' Conference, Monsignor Gadecki, Bishop of Poznan, has written a letter to the Pope speaking of the situation, of the danger for his country and for the whole Church, speaking of the contagion that the German Synod is provoking, of the risk that the German Synod brings for the whole Church, and of the real danger of a schism. The response of Monsignor Batzing, president of the German bishops, has been immediate. He has accused him almost of treason. Why did he not say it to his face when they met in Rome during the Synod? Why did he have to write to the Pope behind his back? He has come to tell him to mind his own business and to let them, the Germans, follow their path, because according to them, this German synodal path is already, the new light of the world. Jesus Christ is no longer the light of the world, but the German synodal path is now the new light of the world, the new light that will allow the darkness of the preconciliar church, the horrible darkness that for them is a symptom of repression, to be left behind. The Poles are not going to resign themselves. They are determined to stand up to it because they know what the German invasion means, which was once military and today is ideological, and which affects the whole society and not just the church, but also the church. And I believe that we would do well to imitate the Poles and not allow ourselves to be subjected to this ideological invasion that it has its origin in Germany, although not only in Germany. Another place where they will not allow themselves to be subdued is the United States. One of perhaps unknown but most brilliant and interesting bishops of the American episcopate is the Bishop of Fort Wayne South Bend, Monsignor Rhodes. In his diocese, there are great universities, for example, the University of Notre Dame. But there is also a Catholic women's university that has decided to open its doors to men who say they are or feel themselves to be women. The bishop recalled that the teaching of the Catholic on gender ideology, He recalled what Pope Francis has said in so many times. There's only male and female gender, and that is the gender we're born with. It is the gender that our biology gives us. It is the teaching of the Church. I insist, it is the teaching that Pope Francis has repeated so many times. Well, then, Monsignor Rhodes has also told those at the university that if they want to continue to call themselves a Catholic university, they have to be faithful to the doctrine and teaching of the Church. Another one, therefore, who does not give up. From Rome, this week came a piece of news and a rumor that the news has been that Pope's health, there has been in the end, it has been recognized as such, an acute bronchitis. Because of it, the medical term has recommended the Pope to rest. And the trip he had planned to make to Dubai Summit and Climate has been cancelled. That does not mean that the Pope has not had audiences during these days. He has had them, and some interesting ones. But at least that trip, which obviously was an intense and heavy trip, has been cancelled. However, everything seems to indicate, at least at this moment, that the Pope is out of danger and that he is recovering perfectly. The other thing that has not been news, but a rumor that seems to be consistent, but it is a rumor after all. I don't really like to talk about rumors because they often don't happen, or they are simply wave balloons to see what effect they could have if they were to happen. I'm referring to an insistent rumor, even announced publicly by a person very close to the Pope as a chief historian, his chief biographer. The rumor is that they are going to take away Cardinal Burke's house and salary. He lives in an apartment very close to the Vatican, very close to St. Peter's Square. They are going to take away his house and his salary because they supposedly, he's taken advantage of that to attack the Pope and the Church. I repeat, rumors. I want to say the same thing I said when Monsignor Strickland was removed of the Diocese of Tyler. Who does it benefit and who does it hurt? Is that smart? Is that effective? I am sure that Cardinal Burke has enough friends in the United States, and not just there, who will provide more than enough for his housing needs. However, he wants to live and also for his money. I don't think Cardinal Burke will be affected in the least to that point. So what is the lesson? What is the teaching? Who would really be affected by this if it were to happen? An old Spanish proverb says, "Keep your friends close and your enemies closer." I believe that in this case, as in many others, popular wisdom is worth listening to. But I think the most important thing is that we are about to enter Advent. Advent is, above many other wonderful things, the time of the virtue of hope. When Christmas is almost here, we will celebrate the Feast of the Virgin of Hope. In Spain, she is called María de la O. She is the Virgin of Hope. A pregnant woman is said to be in a state of good hope. Advent is a time of hope. Sometimes it is, as said by the French writer Bernarnos in the Diary of a Rural Priest. Sometimes it is the great hope, or the heroic hope, for your personal situation, your family, your work, your health, your age, your country, or for your collective situation in the Church. It is a time to say, "Lord, I believe in you and I trust in you, because hope does not disappoint," said St. Paul. It does not disappoint, and he who was born in the cave of Bethlehem was the hope of the world, and yet no one would have said so. Everyone would have simply seen a newborn baby in the conditions of extreme poverty who needed everything and had nothing. Instead, it was he who had everything and who came to give us, who feel we have everything. The only thing we do not have, which is precisely hope. Happy Advent, happy season of the hope that does not disappoint and that sometimes can be heroic and that sometimes has to be the great hope. Until next week, God willing.